To Tel Aviv. Joining me is former IDF spokesperson and senior fellow at the Foundation of Defence of Democracies, Jonathan Conricus. Jonathan, thanks so much for your time. Obviously, there was talks with Iran happening in Geneva. We saw less than a year ago those strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities, and then this all kicked off with a so-called preemptive strike from Israel. What was the threat? Is that clear?
Hi, Laura. Good morning. One part missing in the chronology of events here is that the Iranian people took to the streets and demanded that they get free of the tyranny of the Iranian regime. That was an important point. I think that was, in a sense, an opportunity from an Israeli perspective. And I think it was a cry for help from the Iranian people, to which the American president responded, help is on the way. I think that was a pivotal moment. And I think another pivotal moment is, it's hard to put, my finger on it, but it's this continuous refusal by the Iranian regime to back down and to do what's smart in their own interest. They've refused to budge on the nuclear issue, they have refused to budge on ballistic missiles, and they have refused to budge on supporting terrorism in the region. All three key components, absolutely fundamental components from an American and definitely Israeli perspective. And since the Iranians thought that they could keep talking and talking would provide them with the defense that they needed from American and Israeli action, I think now we can see that they thought wrong, and that those Iranian tactics, they were quite transparent, and really that bluff was called by Israel and the US.
This is obvious that this is something that Israel has wanted for quite some time. Regime change. Khamenei is being wiped out, as well as around 48 of senior leadership that was surrounding him. But what does success look like in the ultimate ending of all of this, Jonathan? What does Israel want? Because let's be frank, this supreme leader was 86 years old. There would have been succession plans in place. If you wipe out him, do you really wipe out an ideology?
Yeah, what Israel wants is directly related to what Israel has been suffering from Iran for the latest 30 or so years. I mean, the regime has been around for 47 years, but basically, the Iranian regime has been actively pursuing the destruction of the state of Israel. They've been trying to build a nuclear bomb for that purpose. They have been funding, arming, and directing a wide array of enemies against Israel, and they have been firing ballistic missiles at Israel, and they have the responsibility, whether direct or indirect, of thousands of Israelis that have been murdered over the years by different terror organizations. And the Iranian regime has said very clearly, we want to destroy the Zionist entity. In my mind, what Israel is doing now is 20, 30 years too late, but better late than never. And I applaud the leadership for doing it now. But really what Israel wants is to live in peace and within our borders, without having to look beyond the shoulder and concern ourselves with weapons of mass destruction being fired at us from Iran, or terrorists attacking our civilians, firing rockets or tunneling into our borders. That's the basic desire, and success here, the objective, I think, will be to facilitate for the Iranian people to overthrow the Iranian regime. That, I think, is the eventual success, which I agree with you will take more than 4 weeks. But what we're focusing on now, in my understanding, is to create the conditions on the ground, the military conditions on the ground for that to be possible.
Okay, so if Trump's talking about 4 weeks, it would seem to me that the American objectives would be quite different for those of the Israeli ones. Do you accept that?
Yeah, I think that there are differences, discrepancies, because the US doesn't have the same amount of skin in the game that Israel has. Currently, I think, share there's very significant overlap in our strategic objectives, but I think the US has much more tolerance for the existence of the regime because it isn't such a severe threat to the US homeland or to US civilians. It's a threat to US interest, US standing, US troops in the region, but not to US civilians and the US homeland. For Israel, it is different, and Iran is really a threat to our very existence here and to the people who live here. So I think that's where it kind of differs. And eventually, I think, if we're honest, this will go down according to American directives, whether Israel prefers or not prefers so. But then there's also the X factor here of the Iranian people. Once the fighting is over, or slightly before, the Iranian people will have the opportunity to actually regain control over their country. They may do that, they may fail to do it. But at the end of the day, if they do so, then that'll be a real game changer and something that I think has tremendous positive potential for the region.
Yeah, the protests and the rising up of Iranian people is absolutely critical in all of this. Trump urged them to do that as he struck at the heart of Iran. But we have to look at the numbers as well and the ideology. I mean, the ideology is embedded in the leadership, in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard there. And we're talking about 180,000 members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard who are dedicated to that ideology. Is that a problem?
It is a problem. According to President Trump, many of them are reaching out in order to get some kind of amnesty and a different fate. I hope that is really the case. But I mean, 180,000 isn't much when you look at the size of the population in Iran, which is almost 90 million, of which tens of millions of Iranians have taken to the street in face of mortal danger in order to show their discontent with the oppression of the Iranian regime. What the Iranian people hasn't had at their disposal are weapons, effective communications, and coordination. Now, since Israel, for the first time, has actually started to strike command and control and headquarters of the really the part of the Iranian establishment that is part of the oppressive functions, the domestic security, police, judicial, and a few others, that will be a game changer. And then 180,000 hardcore ideologists in the Revolutionary Guard and Basij, I think they will have a different perspective on things.
What do you think? What do you think the next couple of days look like, Jonathan? Because I think it is most notable in this conflict, and I do realise the most deadly effect has been where you are in Israel, with 9 people killed in successful Iranian strikes, which are being made with intent. There is there the same intent we've seen in terms of the attacks on the Gulf states? I think that is most surprising. And there was some suggestion from the interim Iranian leadership this morning that some of those missiles were errant.
Yeah, not errant, but they're saying that, we have dispersed command and control, and that unit commanders are now independent in their ability to fire, which is a long way of saying our command and control has been ruptured, and that's why we are behaving like madmen and firing ballistic missiles at populated centers, killing civilians all around the Middle East, which is what the Iranians are doing. I can understand that they have an intent to kill civilians in Israel. That's not news. But I am surprised to see them fire ballistic missiles at Abu Dhabi and Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, including causing significant damage and casualties, killing people. That is a surprise because I think it is counterproductive for the Iranians. It may be because they have real issues with command and control because of the actions of US and Israel that has taken out many of the command nodes and really the ability for effective communications, maybe. Or maybe the Iranians think that if they fire on Gulf states, that will create pressure on the US to stop the campaign. I think they got an answer from the US president saying we're going to stop only when we complete our goals. And I think they've gotten an answer from Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis, who are saying we are not happy with your aggression against us and we're actually going to defend ourselves, which, if happens, will definitely be a first for the region. So what's in store? It'll be very crucial to see how many ballistic missiles